to you I'll tell how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Folks, you can leave us a voicemail at any time. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact at any time as well. Hope you had a good week, as good as you can with all of the news. We do, and we'll be talking about some of the big stories in the news a little bit later in the program. We had something that's a little bit more local and a little bit may have flown under the radar for many people here, but the Madison County Legislative Delegation every year holds a forum before the start of the legislative session where the legislators take the time to listen to their constituents, hear what they would like the session to be focused on. And so the Labor Council, the Regional Federation of Unions, has been going to this for the last couple of years in a row to try to, let the legislators know what working people in North Alabama are focused on, particularly as it relates to working people. We were there again last week. Adam, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, happy to talk a little bit about the forum. Like you said, it happens every year, so it's something to keep on your radar if you live here in North Alabama, because all of the lawmakers typically show up for this. There were a couple of absences. They said they had, other obligations, but for the most part, you're going to see every lawmaker who has even a sliver of Madison County. So even folks like Senator Arthur Orr, who's more, Decatur, Morgan County area. He has a little piece of Madison County. He was there. So it's a really good opportunity to, try to engage. A couple of things about like the logistics of it. They limit speakers to 3 minutes apiece, and they are very strict about that. And they were also really strict about keeping it to just 1 hour, which in practical terms, by the time they posted the colors and had invocation prayer and all this and that, really meant about 45 minutes or so of folks getting a chance to speak. So, I signed up to speak. Jacob, several of us from the Labor Council did sign up, but unfortunately we did not get a chance to speak because, again, they limited it to 3 minutes per speaker. And it was a packed house. It typically is. I've been going to this off and on for many years now. It's usually really well attended, which I would hope the lawmakers would start to realize that there is a demand for this kind of thing. There's not a lot of this happening in other parts of the state, is my understanding. So I do want to give credit to the lawmakers in Madison County, to the delegation, all of them, who are willing to do this. It's a good opportunity to hear from constituents. I just wish they would expand it. I wish they would do more of it. It's really hard to say all that you believe in about what should be fixed in Alabama in 3 minutes once a year, right? And that's not to say that we don't have opportunities to engage with lawmakers otherwise. Certainly we do and we should. But, it was a packed house, and we heard some really interesting issues. I would characterize the crowd as pretty progressive. I would also say that all of the issues brought up were relevant to people in Alabama and seemed to be, issues that, folks would want to get behind. For example, there were a couple different speakers talking about private wastewater treatment plants. Those being located near rivers, near residential communities, the kind of harm it could have. So there are folks who are very passionate and well organized at the forum. They've been working with lawmakers to get some legislation around this. So that was an interesting issue, and that was one of the values, I think, in this forum is, we get really stuck in silos about the issues that are important to us. So, Jacob and I know a lot about the union and worker issues happening in and around the State House, but maybe not about everything else going on that's relevant to working people in our communities. So It's a valuable thing just for that, if nothing else. You don't hear a lot of responses from the lawmakers. Typically, they don't really say much. They don't really engage a whole lot. Just sort of listen. So you're probably not going to get an answer from a lawmaker at this forum, but you will certainly learn about some of the issues that are important to people. We heard several other issues that we've talked about on this show be brought up: criminal justice reform and the death penalty. There were several speakers about those kind of issues. We also heard from folks talking about the CHOOSE Act, the private school voucher program. There was a strong opposition to that from one of the speakers. And I'm trying to think, some of the other issues, there were a couple of parents who came and spoke. Their child died at school, and they are pushing for reforms inside the schools to, have more equipment, more training for education employees, to try to save a life in the case of an emergency. So that was really powerful to hear from those parents. So I always recommend people check this out. I think it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to, both thank the lawmakers for doing this, but also encourage them to really expand. We need more opportunities to engage with lawmakers. We need more opportunities for the public to be heard. So that's something that, is on our mind as well. Like, how can we fill the gap? How can we, do some of our own events, perhaps in the community to try to fill some of those gaps that are left behind when you only do this thing one time for 45 minutes once a year. But it was great to be there, to see the crowd, to see how many people were engaged, because the legislative session starts next week. It starts next week on Tuesday, I believe. So we'll be hearing the Governor Kay Ivey's State of the State address for Alabama next week. The Alabama session will kick off, and there's going to be some important issues. Some of the issues that we wanted to talk about tax reform. We wanted to talk about family values and how lawmakers could actually live up to family values by protecting working parents, by protecting parents in the workplace, ensure they actually have time to spend with their families, things like scheduling fairness. Those are really important issues. And we also wanted to talk about the use of tax incentives. Our state is very generous with subsidies and tax incentives to big corporations, typically with very minimal strings attached. About the only string attached to tax incentives for big companies in Alabama is that they can't voluntarily recognize a union, right? They passed SB 231 a couple years ago that said that, if a company voluntarily recognizes a union from their workforce, they could lose their incentives. So the state wants to punish companies for being friendly or, receptive to their union workforce, which is absolutely, wild. But we are looking at other strings attached to these tax incentives. If you're going to do that, right, then reasonably we should assume that you would also want to protect people by putting strings attached to these incentives. So, for example, child labor and human trafficking laws. There's been a bill moving the last couple years called the Clawback Bill, which would, if a company violates child labor or human trafficking laws, give the state the ability to revoke those tax incentives, to claw those back. That's good legislation. That's good accountability. We cannot allow child labor to be flourishing in the state. We've got to make sure we send a message to these big companies that, if you're going to be using our tax dollars to make a profit in this state, you damn well better do it on the high road. And so those are some of the issues we wanted to talk about. Jacob, what did I leave out?
Well, I did want to mention on the tax incentive stuff as it relates to child labor. I know that it can always feel very difficult to make anything good happen in Alabama because the legislators and the politicians really seem, ideologically opposed to good things happening for Alabamians and particularly for working people as such in the state. But the legislation that would have enabled the Alabama Department of Revenue to revoke tax incentives if employers were found to have engaged in child labor. That did actually pass the state Senate 30-0 last year. It died in the state House, but look, it's really easy to vote in favor of legislation if you don't think that it's actually going to get past the other house. And so I don't know how much conversation is happening between the leadership of the legislative houses about, look, if you pass this maybe this year, then we look good, and maybe you can pass it next year, and we can say in both years that it got gummed up, and maybe we'll get to it subsequently. But at least on paper, every single one of Alabama's state senators is for this legislation. And so I think that there's real reason to believe that this could get passed in this legislative session. This is going to be the third session that it has been introduced, and it got farther each time. I think the first session, I don't think it got to a vote. The second session, it passed the state Senate. And so, a reasonable progression would be that it gets a vote in the state House this year, in addition to the state Senate. And so we'll be tracking that pretty closely and advocating that we get that we're able to get that on the docket. So I think that's pretty important. I do also want to mention tying the incentives to pro-family workplace practices. We had a member who was going to be speaking to that and talking about how, because he has been a union member and worked for the federal government most of his career following his military service, I believe he's a veteran, he has been able to reliably count on a normal work week, just working 40 hours a week and then being able to go home, participate in religious and community and family events. And that's been a really important part of his life. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this state and in this country who do not get that, who have to work 6-7 days a week, 10-12 hours a day. And really, the way that I've thought about it as I've learned more about these types of stories is that it seems like people in that position are more or less sponsoring their family rather than actually being a part of it. And that is just a really, really sad state of affairs. And I don't think that, I don't think generally that we should support companies being able to do that to people. But certainly, just like if we're going to be giving hundreds of millions of dollars, they shouldn't be violating child labor law and having 12, 13-year-olds in manufacturing environments. If we're going to be giving hundreds of millions of dollars to a corporation, we should also say that, generally speaking, maybe there are certain exceptions, and just like there have been for this brother that was going to speak to this. Like he said, there were a few times in his career where he did have to work mandatory overtime, but like 95% of his career that he had, he did not have to work overtime. And so, generally speaking, if we're going to be giving millions of dollars to a corporation, we should say, look, you got to treat our people good. You got to treat the workers of Alabama well, and you should not be able to say, as a condition of employment, you have to sacrifice 60 to 70 hours of your life every single week to this company. That's not an unreasonable ask. We should also have things like regular scheduling so that workers know when and on what days and for how long they'll be working. That way they can reliably plan events with their family and their community and their religious organizations. We should also have living wages. The idea that, we were just talking a couple of months ago about the city of Athens giving like $500,000 to open an Olive Garden. And it's like Olive Garden, and they mentioned in the press release, it's going to create dozens of jobs. It's like, those are not good jobs. Those are not good jobs. And if we're going to be, and a lot of those jobs, unfortunately, are going to be such that either, you got to work all the time to be able to make any sort of living, or you don't make a living at all. If we're going to be giving any money to these corporations, they should be paying their workers well. Also talked about, you mentioned the temporary worker bill of rights. We had a construction worker talking about how construction contractors who utilize temp agencies really undermine not only union contractors, right? Because, of course they're going to undermine union contractors because union contractors have a good union contract that has good wages, benefits, protections, and stuff like that. But they also undermine non-union contractors that try to treat their workers well. And so again, if we're going to be giving out a bunch of money to corporations, either they shouldn't be using temp agencies, or these temp agencies need to be a lot more transparent, and they need to have rights too. So I think all of those are really important policies that the legislature could address and take up in this legislative session, and do something to actually make the lives of working Alabamians better. We've got our guest on the line. Julie Prill is the Assistant Business Manager for the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades District Council 77. Julie, welcome to the Valley Labor Report. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. I'm not hearing Julie. I don't know if she's muted. I'm still not hearing. Okay, here she is. Can you hear me, Julie?
I can hear you all.
Perfect. I can hear you now. Okay, great. So Julie Prill is the Assistant Business Manager for the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades District Council 77. Julie, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Really excited to have you. And I wanted to talk to you because you've got a really exciting story out of your district council that I'm excited to talk about. But before we do that, could you talk a little bit about why unionism is important to you, and what it's like being a unionist in the South?
Sure, I'd be glad to share that. So for me, unionism is important because I've seen what it looks like when working people are expected to carry everything on their own. People working hard, you're doing everything right, but you still feel like you're disposable. And I've also seen what can change when people realize they don't have to do it alone. For me, unionism is about dignity and respect. It's about having people be able to speak up without fear, go home safe, and know that the work that they're doing matters. And it's personal because it is about people and their families. Their stability, being able to be present at home and at work, and building a life that is not just about surviving your job.
Exactly.
But furthermore, for me, like when it comes to being a unionist in the South, I've never been a unionist in any other part, but for me, I feel like in the South, it comes with unique challenges. We operate in this region, and there's a deep anti-union history, of course, right to work laws, and a lot of misinformation about what unions are and who they actually serve. But it also makes the work more meaningful. When people here choose to be a union member, it's because they've thought really deeply about it and they recognize the power of standing together. So for me, organizing in the South requires patience, trust building. We have to have a lot of honest conversation, and also, but that builds us incredibly strong and resilient in our union culture.
Can you talk about what members of your union do?
Sure. So with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trade, specifically in this district council across the Southeast, in construction, we represent industrial, commercial, and residential painters. I myself is an industrial painter by trade. We also represent glazers performing glasswork, drywall finishers, and all of these members work in homes, schools, churches, nuclear plants, Department of Energy, sports stadiums, and a lot of other places. But we also proudly represent many members that people may not traditionally think that the painters are represent in the industrial and manufacturing facilities, paint makers, glass makers. We have folks that make electrical parts, and also who work in the Navy shipbuilding industry.
And, you mentioned that organizing or being a unionist in the South comes with unique challenges, and that, it requires patience and having conversations with people to try to bring them into the union. And that's something that your district council has really been focused on over the last year, focused on organizing internally and externally. Can you talk about what that has looked like, and what have you been able to achieve?
Sure. So, last year we really shifted how we approach our internal organizing. And our main campaign was down at the Pascagoula shipyard in Mississippi. So instead of being reactive and just waiting for workers to come to us, we made a commitment to go meet them where they are, showing up on their job site, but also showing up in their lives. We started doing house calls. So talking on front porches and sitting at kitchen tables, having real conversations with our members, and just listening, asking our workers what is actually happening on the job and what matters for them the most. So then from there, we focused on identifying their workers' issues that they were raising, from safety concerns, even as simple as PPE preferences, communication gaps from us, and conditions on the site. And then doing the work to really make the changes to build trust with those people, So for me, the biggest thing with the internal organizing wasn't just asking members to step up and being involved, but is talking about our union and being willing to change and improve and respond to workers when they tell us something isn't working. So at the shipyard, I feel like through all those house calls, listening to our members and potential members, through their building trust and solidarity, we were able to internally organize. We organized 210 members that were previously right to work painters and sandblasters out on the job site at that one facility.
That's incredible. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, but specifically you mentioned that a lot of that required or was reliant on house calls. And house calls are something that is kind of debated a little bit within the labor movement. I think that most people are still supportive of house calls, but you do see some people saying, oh, well, today, house calls are not really a good strategy. We got to do other things to engage members or prospective members. And house calls are something that the opposition uses a lot to try to demonize unions and union organizers, trying to paint house calls as harassment or intimidating. And, as somebody who's been on lots of house calls, I can say that if there, to the extent there is any intimidation, it goes the other way. So why do you think that house calls are important and still relevant today?
Yeah. So I'd be glad to share more about that. So, but I kind of want to back up a little bit how we got to wanting to do that in our union. So last year as a whole, the IUPAT launched a Build-in Union Power campaign. And that was led by our general president, Jimmy Williams. And this is all about education of union history, the history of our union, and where we can go and grow through internal organizing, not just getting our members involved in their union, but helping them feel empowered and educated. So that's where we took a look in DC 77 of how can we do this, right? So with the house calls, what we realized, if we don't have people showing up at our union halls, and you always can't have those conversations at work. We go out to job sites where our members are but you can't have that conversation. So I do definitely agree with you that there is hesitation. It could be told that's harassment, but we don't go with any kind of agenda. If someone asks us to leave, they do, but that really even happens.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are so grateful that you stop by and you can have that conversation with them. And it puts us in a spot where it's a little bit more vulnerable, right, to just go there. But those are our members, and we want to connect with them, and we want to really show them that we care about them, and we want to hear from them. And that's where we, started the work and really having harder conversations with people.
Yeah, I agree. I have had, some of the best conversations doing house calls because, it's so easy to kind of, just be rude and just treat somebody as less than human through texts or on social media, and even through phone calls. I mean, phone calls, you get a little bit more of that human element, but seeing somebody physically face to face and, seeing that they're, just like you, they're not out to hurt you, not out to get you. They're just, one of the people generally that you work with that want to talk to you about how you can make your jobs better. So I'm a big fan of house calls. I think they're really important. And I think that they're so important because having those conversations are best had in person. And when we spoke on the phone the other day, you mentioned that some of those conversations can be hard. So what sorts of conversations are those that are difficult, and how do you have them productively?
Yeah. And so when I mean hard, they're not necessarily, what is hard is that we have to, as a union, open up and be vulnerable on our side, admitting that we don't always get it right, admitting that there's gaps between the union and how it's supposed to be, and then how maybe things show up on the job site sometimes. But I feel like that honesty and transparency and listening to people and not being, feeling like you're personally attacked, and us being open-minded and willing to listen is where we've been able to build that trust. And looking at it from a point of when we hear from people and members, I mean, that's what it's all about. Like, you're representing the union with IUPAT. We're here to try to make sure people have dignity and respect, like back what I was talking about at the front. And that doesn't just continue that doesn't end when you become a union member or when you get out on the job and start working under a CBA. That should propel you to have more of a voice and be able to be part of your union. So, we're just trying to not see those conversations as complaint, but treating them as a responsibility. Because we're going to be asking our workers and our unions to help us build power together. Well, our union has to be worthy of that trust. So we've been committing ourselves to fixing what we can, and changing what needs to change, and then closing the loop with our members so that they know honesty and transparency matters to us. And I don't think having those conversations weakens us. You have to talk about the elephant in the room or whatever it is, to get through things. It can help you make you stronger. Because I don't think that we'll be able to build power in the labor movement if we're pretending everything's fine. We have to be able to figure out and work together to grow.
Absolutely. And so, your district council has had a big year in 2025. The Painters Union generally has been, I think, trying to do a lot and spending a lot of resources to try to make their union stronger and be a part of a fighting labor movement. What should we be on the lookout, just from a media and news perspective from the Painters Union internationally and from District Council 77 in 2026?
Yeah. So I think as far as District Council 77, we should be able to give you a further report next year because we're continuing this work. And we're internal organizing. We're launching a few other campaigns across our council. We're hiring more organizers in regions we haven't had them in a long time to assist with this internal organizing efforts. But doubling down on external organizing as well, strengthening our relationships with our current partners, and supporting other building trades and other unions, and just, solidarity across the South. And I feel like it's really the time to really step up and show people what being part of a union is.
Absolutely. Julie Prill is the Assistant Business Manager for IUPAT District Council 77. Julie, if somebody's interested in joining the Painters Union in your region, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, so they can go right on our website, iupatdc77.org. They can find us on Indeed, LinkedIn, basically every social media.
All right, Julie, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, folks. We'll be right back with more Union Radio. We'll be talking to the president of the Kentucky AFL-CIO about how they elected a union member to the state Senate. Really exciting conversation. Stay tuned, folks. We will be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit nalc.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morris, and my co-host is Adam Keller. Thank you for tuning in today. We just wrapped up a conversation with the Assistant Business Manager for IUPAT District Council 77 about their organizing in 2025. We will soon be having a conversation with the Kentucky AFL-CIO president about how they elected a union member to the state senate, and more on the show today. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We'll open the phones in the second half of the program. Look forward to hearing from you all. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm. But we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or just make a one-time donation, you can go to patreon.com/thevalley Report or tvlr.fm/donate. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you are a member of a union, then you should definitely get your local district council or international union to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey y'all, let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener, we really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Here's what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from January 2nd to the 9th. In new union campaigns, 8 workers at Mission Conversion Service Alliance in Keville, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Steelworkers, USW. 6 workers at UPS in Dallas, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 745. 9 workers at Daimler Truck in Jacksonville, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Auto Workers, UAW. 17 workers at RE Global in Fort Stewart, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Industrial Technical and Professional Employees Union, ITPEU-OPEIU, Local 4873. 4 workers at the Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., filed a petition to hold a union election with the District of Columbia's Nurses Association. 53 workers at Sonica in St. Charles, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. 525 security guards at Paragon Professional Services in El Paso, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Federal Contract Guards of America. 37 workers at American Chemical Society in Washington, D.C., filed a petition to hold a union election with the Washington Baltimore News Guild, Local 32035. 64 workers at the International Brotherhood of Teamsters in Washington, D.C., filed a petition to hold a union election with the IBT Staff Council, and 1 worker at the Associated Press in San Juan, Puerto Rico, filed a petition to hold a union election with the News Guild, Local 31222. In election results, workers at SRM Concrete in Glasgow, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold, voted in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 89. In a press release, the union called out the company's illegal union-busting tactics, including retaliating against pro-union employees, and noted that they have filed several unfair labor practice charges with the National Labor Relations Board. 2 workers at AORS 21 LLC in Wheeling, West Virginia, withdrew their petition for a union election with the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, IATSE, and workers at Climate Pros in Texas voted in favor of unionization with the United Association of Plumbers and Pipefitters, UA, Local 100. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, Texas teachers are standing up for free speech. Their union, the American Federation of Teachers, AFT, filed a lawsuit against the Texas Education Agency and its commissioner, Mike Morath, challenging what the union calls, quote, unlawful investigations into educators' protected First Amendment activity in the days following last September's assassination of Charlie Kirk. In strikes and bargaining updates, journalists at the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, unionized with the Sun-Sentinel Guild, CWA Local 3108, voted unanimously in favor of ratifying their first union contract. This contract is the first union contract in the Sentinel's 115-year history. It includes the across-the-board raises for the first time in 10 years, a $1,500 signing bonus, and protections against job losses from AI. The Association of Flight Attendants, AFA-CWA, has been able to protect flight attendants' pay and benefits as Spirit heads into bankruptcy. The union was able to forge an agreement to shield those things from the courts, management, and financiers. In a statement, the Spirit AFA Master Executive Council voiced optimism, saying, "We showed the company we will never be silent. Hold your head high. You showed up, you spoke up, and you refused to be ignored. We have faced challenges in the past, and we will overcome this too, as we have in the past." As journalists at the Austin American-Statesman negotiate their new contract, they are requesting reader support through a petition calling on management to commit to fair, sustainable pay, set clear limits on the use of AI, and improve retirement and leave benefits. Houston Public Media has a new article about all the wins that Unite Here Local 23 has secured in their city over the last year. And in political and legislative updates, some politicians don't want millions of people to lose health care on their watch. So, after passing a discharge petition to bring legislation to a vote because the Republican leadership wouldn't bring it to the floor, the U.S. House voted in favor of a clean extension of the ACA subsidies. The legislation now goes to the Senate, but similar legislation has already failed in that body. The AFL-CIO said in a statement that they commend the Republican and Democratic leaders who stood with workers and voted to stop this health care price hike. Unions reacted to the ICE killing of a Minnesota mother last week. The country's largest nurses union, National Nurses United, said, quote, armed federal agents on our streets and in our communities, not immigrant workers, are the biggest threat to our collective safety, and that, quote, increased militarization of our neighborhoods actively endangers public health. Unite Here, a union of food service and hospitality workers, said that this is part of a trend. Quote, this murder is just the latest example of an agency and an immigration enforcement apparatus in general that is completely out of control. They also mentioned that, quote, Unite Here members who work at the Minneapolis airport have been detained by ICE when they showed up to work despite having work authorizations and valid badges from the TSA. Unions are reacting to the attack on Venezuela and the kidnapping of its president by the U.S. The International Trade Union Confederation, ITUC, a global labor federation that actually traces its roots back to an anti-communist labor formation from the Cold War, came out in strong opposition to the move. In their statement, they condemned military intervention, defended sovereignty and self-determination, demanded respect for human rights, and called for peace and dialogue. The Communication Workers of America, CWA, a U.S. union representing primarily telecommunications and manufacturing workers, also condemned the U.S.'s actions and pointed to effects on working people from the administration's policies, pointing out how, quote, the administration's chaotic Venezuelan policy has undermined an American manufacturing success story when union workers at GE Appliance Park in Kentucky lost their work permits earlier this year. The worst year for job creation since 2020. That's what the latest numbers from Trump's own Labor Department show. And even then, most of those jobs were created before May. Employers added only 50,000 jobs in December and 584,000 for the year. In 2024, the last year of Joe Biden's presidency, employers added more than 2 million jobs. If we missed anything, you can let us know at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. Or leave us a written comment at tvlr.fm/contact. Have we got our guests in the Zoom? If we do, okay. We are really excited to have this conversation. Going to get to it just a couple of minutes early. And it is with the leadership of the Kentucky AFL-CIO about how they have been able to elect a union member to the state Senate. That union member, Gary Clemens. Really excited for this conversation. Dustin Reinstadler is president of the Kentucky AFL-CIO, and Lyles Taylor, joining us in a moment, is the mobilization director for the Kentucky AFL-CIO. Dustin, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having us. And thank you for what you guys are doing, putting on this show. Good stuff.
Really appreciate it, brother. Thank you for taking the time. I know as president of a state labor federation, you're very busy, so I really do appreciate it. Before we get into this conversation about electing a union member to the state Senate, could you talk to us a little bit about the importance of, unionism generally and why you're so dedicated to the labor movement?
Absolutely. So for me, the importance of unionism goes far beyond just unions. It really goes to all working class people. And when you really boil down, I'd say the problems of America, the problems of the world, they really come down to greed. 99% of them, no matter what it is, it could be solved without billionaires or with a better system of wealth distribution or whatever. Whether that's an economic issue, a social issue, whatever, organized labor to me is those people that come together to stand up against that greed and against that injustice. And I guess that's why I'm so proud to be a part of that movement.
What is it like to be a union leader? I mean, the prime union leader in the state of Kentucky, in an area of the country where unions are less popular than the national average. Although Kentucky does have, I believe, the highest union density rate in the South. To the extent that Kentucky kind of conceives of itself as part of the South. But what is that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. A good overview for sure. We definitely do have the highest union density of all the southern states at just over 12%, compared to, say, South Carolina, who I think is at 3%. There are some big differences there in southern states. We are a red state with a blue governor, who I think everybody knows, our good buddy Andy Beshear. And we do still have some. I'm not dogging all Republicans. We have some pretty decent Republican state legislators in the House and Senate, as well as some county leaders. I just think Kentucky is one of those states where, if you look back at even organized labor history with the coal miners and some other big strikes and big movements, we've always been a state that really somehow found a way to come together. And I'm not saying that we're any perfect example of that right now, but we're doing the best we can to find common ground and really let people know that, hey, we're all working class people, and we should be doing what's best for us, not really what's best for what the party says.
I do think that it is so interesting that Kentucky is definitely seen as such a conservative state, and yet has a really relatively high unionization rate, as far as southern states go, as far as right to work states go, and seen as a conservative state, but has a Democratic governor. I get, what would you do you chalk that up primarily to Kentucky's history of class struggle and unionism, or is there something else maybe that I don't see because I'm not in that state?
Yeah, listen, it's hard to chalk that up to one thing, but that certainly is a big element of that equation. Honestly, I know I come out of the bricklayers union, so keep in mind my background is construction, and that's typically of the unions, a lot of the more right-leaning and conservative union members. But I'll just tell you, I knew so many back when Andy Beshear was running for attorney general, back when he was running for his first term as governor. I knew so many Republicans that just liked the guy and liked his message.
Right.
So I think his messaging, and I think the shift in probably the Kentucky Democrat Party's messaging that we've just seen recently towards more working class issues and a Kentucky for everyone is certainly part of that. I'll probably call over to Lyles Taylor, our mobilization director, see if he wants to chime in on that, if that's okay.
Yes, please, Lyles.
Absolutely. Populism runs deep in Kentucky.
Mm.
Our biggest hurt has been the trend on social issues that have distracted people from times. And I think we have found with constitutional amendment votes in Kentucky and other things that when push comes to shove, on issues that matter to working people, Kentucky overwhelmingly supports those issues. It's just cutting through the politics of things and that misinformation and other things to try to move folks forward and electorally.
So, Lyles, and I really appreciate you coming on. Again, Lyles is the mobilization director for the Kentucky AFL-CIO. Can you talk to us about Gary Clemens? He was recently elected to the Kentucky State Senate, a union member. Talk to us about his biography and his campaign and how he won.
Absolutely. Well, Gary's been a strong union leader for decades now. He's been active in the United Steelworkers, is engaged in so many, from community service to fighting hard for his members as a local union president, and as well as being involved in politics and our actions in Frankfort for years now. And when the opportunity arose in a special election for him to step up and be a candidate to fill that seat, he was very well prepared to do so because he had so much experience electorally as well as policy issues and honestly knowing his community because he has served in so many different capacities that way. But we rallied around him and we're super excited to be have one of our own have an opportunity to serve in the legislature. And so we knocked on just under 7,000 doors in just a few weeks in a special election. We called almost 20,000 phone calls. We had talked to, and these are just, I want to be clear, these are just union household members in that district. One of the really special things about that district is that we had more than 14,000 union household members in this state Senate district because it's a working class district. And so he represented those members, but he represented that community well as well. And so people resonated strongly on that. And so we had almost 2,000 people that we had identified through our program that were going to be supporting Gary, which is pretty awesome. Again, in just such a short time. And we would not have been able to do that without the support of our unions, our affiliated unions who were participating in our program, and quite honestly, a candidate that people could rally around and be excited about.
I'm interested in kind of how he or how people see Gary, because here in Huntsville we've got a union member on the city council, actually a member of my union, AFGE. But for better or worse, and she's great, I think. I mean, we've never had an ask of her that she has not delivered on. But she does not kind of put herself out there as like, I'm a union member first and foremost, right? I mean, the labor council and union members in the labor movement is not her base of power. It comes more from the community. And so I'm curious about how that works with Gary. I mean, is that kind of how he is seen? Is he seen like people voted for him because he's a union leader and he won because he had the support of the labor movement? Or is his power coming from elsewhere?
Well, in my opinion, to be honest, it's all of the above. What's so special about Gary is that he has such strong roots in his community and has a great message as a veteran, as a community leader and activist, volunteering with so many different activities that we do in that area, in Louisville particularly. And so that part was easy on that narrative, but also it was a great benefit that it resonated well with those voters because so many of them were working class people, and they knew he understood their issues as a union leader and as a union member.
He was running in a Democratic seat, and so it's not as if he was not expected to win, but he pushed and he ran as a Democrat, but he won by something like 20 points more than the last Democrat won by. And so the last election was something like 60-40, and this election he won by over 70. He got over 75% of the votes, and the Republican got like 20%. And so, what would you, how did he run up the score so much, I guess, Lyles?
That's a great question. We are still looking into some of those numbers just to see, quite frankly, who went out to vote, because it was an exciting result. It was a really encouraging result for the elections later this year as well. But I think there were a lot of factors in that element. One, he was a great candidate and he put in a lot of work. Ironically, the candidate that he defeated was also the candidate that the previous incumbent had run against. So that you can't say that was any different in that scenario. There was a third-party candidate in that race, but they were really, honestly, not relevant. They didn't really pull many votes, period. But, I think it had a lot to do with the excitement around his race and the focus around his race. And then, honestly, those numbers move up when you have a special election and turnout may be low, but we work so hard to turn out our folks. And so when we rallied around Gary and mobilized voters in that race, the return on investment of that, the margin of that made such a big difference in that outcome. And I always say that about special elections. Anybody can win in a special election, but when you have a great ground game and you mobilize voters and activists, you can certainly win that race, maybe in races that aren't even as competitive in the general election.
Right.
And I'd like to add too, obviously the organized labor groups put in some strong work, but there were a lot of other groups who came out for whatever reason they were particularly behind, but that saw value in Gary and in this race. And it was interesting to see the excitement from people and from groups that weren't union, and we really don't cross over much, although a lot of our values are the same. It was really interesting to see the kind of the buzz and the excitement from all those groups to kind of come together. Although we can't directly work together, to know that they were out there doing their thing and we were out there doing ours. And as Lyle said, we're still going to digest all those numbers to see who voted and why and all that. But all in all, I mean, at the end of the day, Lyle said it. Gary's a great candidate and a great person. I've known him for many years, and I think the way that best sums him up is he's always put others above himself in no matter what he does. And that's the kind of candidates that we need for any office.
Dustin, what would you say Gary's, primary campaign messages were?
Well, his slogan was actually pretty crafty and right to the point, and it was from the shop floor to the Senate floor. Gary is a factory worker here in Louisville. Louisville, there's an area of town called Rubber Town, and they call it that because they still do manufacture some rubber for tire companies and stuff over there. But it's still a very large manufacturing area. But back in the day, it was primarily rubber. Anyway, there are chemical plants, all kinds of. There's a carbon plant, there's power plants over there, all kinds of stuff. So it's a very industrial area, very blue collar, working class. And Gary's message was, "Are we sick of doctors, attorneys, wealthy people, business people going to Frankfurt in Kentucky and shaping our policy and our legislation, or do we want to send somebody that knows what it's like to go up there and give us a voice?" And that was where the excitement came from, in my opinion.
Dustin, why would you say that it's important for union members in particular to run for office? And then for the people who are listening who aren't union members, why would it help them to have a union member in office?
Yeah, so the first question is why would I say it's important for a union member to run? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a lobbyist. I work in Frankfurt a lot of days out of the year, and I see how things work, and I see the appetite of the parties, and I see the appetite of legislators, and I see the special interest groups with the big money, and I see how much some lobbyists make and how much some lobby groups spend. to get their agendas pushed. And I'll tell you, it is far outweighed against the working class. So far outweighed that we need actual working class people. And again, I'm going to say this, whether you're in a union or not. I mean, that union member is important because you're going to have the support of your unions, and you're going to have some money and some boots on the ground. But working class people, I'm talking about if you're out there anything other basically than a billionaire or some kind of a multi-generational wealthy person, um, you should be fired up and upset over what's happening in probably every state in this country, especially in the South. So that's it right there. Just to be able to have the ability to get in there and help some people out.
Lyles, you mentioned that union members were able to knock on 7,000 doors for Gary Clemens and made 20,000 phone calls. That takes a lot of work from a lot of different people. How was the state federation able to bring people in to do that work to support his campaign? And how did you get your affiliates to come together to support the campaign as well?
That's a great question. We typically have folks in our election cycles spread across the state who are volunteers. We also have what's called release staff, where folks will come out of their shop on lost time to do some work on campaigns, whether it be on weekends or even throughout the week, knocking on doors, making calls. We had a good amount of that this time, but it also helps more than anything else to have volunteers come out when Gary showed up for them in the past. And so if when he didn't just help the steelworkers in his career, he's been an advocate for the United Auto Workers, for Teamsters, for electricians, everybody. And so when it was an opportunity for them to return the favor, they showed up in force. And so it was really incredible to see folks come out who I'd never seen before. On our labor walks on Saturdays, wanting to make phone calls from home. That maybe we faced one of the things we faced in this race being in December. We had a significant snow just a weekend before the election, which we were really concerned about what that was going to do, as we dealt with working class people that maybe didn't have the freedom to go out and vote on election day. It's a new concept for Kentucky to have early voting, and we were really hoping to have folks participate on that Saturday, but we had a significant snow on that Saturday. But also we had union members that got out and knocked on doors in the snow on a Saturday. And so not only was it a big deal that we had so many people doing the work, but people were more receptive than in the past by opening the door, because they were so shocked to have somebody stand up and willing to put in that time and work in the snow. And so we had people saying that Saturday, that snowy Saturday, that they had more doors open than they had ever before knocking doors, which was pretty awesome.
That is great. That's really exciting, and would love to see, would love to be able to do that with our labor council here in North Alabama. So we're still in sort of, a lot of people are still in sort of a looking back on 2025 and looking ahead to 2026. So I'm curious, are there any other stories that from 2025 that you think that are really important that happened in Kentucky that you would want to talk about briefly? And then into 2026, what is your federation looking to do to build power? I guess we can go to you, Mr. President.
Oh, thank you. So looking back at 25, speaking on Kentucky, I'm incredibly impressed and grateful for the amount of support for so many things that we put on. We held our very first ever Young Workers Summit. We held our very first ever Women's Summit. And I'm proud to say that for that first one, we had 160 union women come to that gathering for a full day of just relationship building, solidarity, planning, all kinds of good stuff. They built an awesome structure. We had some good strikes with great support, where workers came out ahead. People coming together in solidarity, really showing what it's all about. And then for 2026, I got to give Lyles credit and his program credit. He may correct me if I'm wrong because yesterday was the filing deadline in Kentucky, but I believe we have something like a dozen union members running for office in
Wow.
2026 now. And Lyles is training these. I mean, he's doing a 101, a 201, all these classes showing them how to file, how to do paperwork, how to raise money, how to mobilize, how to knock doors, the whole thing. And this is just our first year of doing so. I expect big things in the future. So yeah, I don't know if you want to give Lyles a chance to
Yeah, Lyles, go
talk
ahead.
about any of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So to that point, so we had about a dozen union members that did the training in the fall and into the December in 2025. But we've come to find that there are even more union members that have filed to run across the state that haven't done the training yet. So
wow,
we want to support them and encourage them and stand with them. And it's really exciting to see folks willing to step up. And honestly, some of that momentum has come from folks who saw what Gary accomplished and wanted to be a part of a movement on that. And so I look for that to grow in 2026, including the fact that we're not done with filing for a lot of local elections, city council, mayor, those city elections. The nonpartisan races don't have a filing deadline until June. So we may even get more by then. And that's really exciting to see.
That's fantastic. We've been talking to Dustin Reinstadler, president of the Kentucky AFL-CIO, and Lyles Taylor, mobilization director for the Kentucky AFL-CIO. Dustin and Lyles, is there anything else that y'all want to talk about before we let you go?
I'd just like to take the opportunity to, again, thank you for putting on this program, and thank your listeners for plugging in and being activists, frankly. And I guess it partially ties to the labor movement, but in this moment in our country right now with what's happened in Minneapolis and what's happened in different states, Oregon and wherever, this is an important moment in time, and there was a time before World War II when we can look back in history and think, why didn't those people do anything at that time? And for me, just if I could take a personal privileges, I don't want anyone looking back on me or us as a labor movement and thinking, why didn't they do anything? So the time to act is now. In fact, we're beyond that point. So let's just remember to come together, whether you're in Alabama, Kentucky, New York, wherever, whether you're in a union or not. We are, fighting billionaires and greed at this point. It's important for us to stay united and not be distracted by some of these wild social issues.
Dustin Reinstadler, president of the Kentucky AFL-CIO, and Lyles Taylor, mobilization director for the Kentucky AFL-CIO. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, folks. We will be right back. Stay tuned. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor. You are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Appreciate everybody tuning in. One of the big stories right now, particularly among the labor movement and even more particularly among the building trades unions, are the White House's, the Trump administration's assault on construction jobs. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers put an article up last week titled "Canceled: The White House's $236 billion Assault on Blue-Collar Jobs." It's quite long. You should read it in its entirety. They talk about how, green energy and green energy investment has done so much for so many parts of the country, particularly in areas where there was a strong manufacturing or fossil fuel production environment that is less, that those industries have been on the decline. And so investment from new energies from new industries have been really, really significant. They talked about Weirton, West Virginia, and how Weirton Steel once employed more than 10,000 workers, but the final forge was closed in 2024. And so, the steel industry used to make this town run, and it's no longer there. But in 2022, there was interest in making and using that steel mill to reopen to build transformers for green generation stations, 3 of which were being built in the jurisdiction of Steubenville, Ohio, IBEW Local 246, in the jurisdiction of Steubenville, Ohio Local 246, which includes Weirton, West Virginia. And, this huge production was made possible by incentives from the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, which provides tax credits for a domestic manufacture of critical clean energy technology. And the The local 246 business manager, Kevin Brown, said he expected 200 to 250 construction jobs just in his local, which would double his membership. And then all of those hopes died because the signs announcing the project faded and the gate stayed chained because of the Trump administration. They talk about another project in May. The materials giant Cleveland Cliffs killed, or the same project, Cleveland Cliffs. They were the ones doing this project. They killed the Weirton project because the tax incentives in the IRA were all gutted, and there was economic pandemonium from the blanket imposition of tariffs. The IBEW notes that since the start of the Trump administration, at least 300 energy and transportation construction projects worth $236 billion have been canceled, postponed, or seriously threatened. Of that, over half of those projects, $131 billion, have been outright canceled, and those cancellations represent at least 250,000 construction jobs lost, according to research conducted by the IBEW and North America's Building Trades Unions, NABTU. These numbers only cover project cancellations or setbacks due to tariffs, tax credit revocations, or economic uncertainty caused by the president's policies in the first 10 months of his term. And so that's not covering other cancellations for other reasons. That's just what the president has done. And so the idea, and I still hear people talk about it, the idea that that people can say with a straight face that, Joe Biden killed 1,000 construction jobs because of what he did to the Keystone XL pipeline. I mean, after this, you can't say that anymore, or at least for every time that you say that you attack Joe Biden for killing 1,000 construction jobs out because of the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline, for every time you say that, you've got to say 255 more times about how you're condemning the Trump administration for killing 255,000 construction jobs because of the cancellation of all of these green energy projects. They mentioned that most of the damage is a result of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, a $1.1 trillion tax giveaway to corporations in the top 1% of earners who take home more than $1 million annually. Those cuts come at the expense of tax incentives and grant programs in the Inflation Reduction Act, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and CHIPS and Science Act that spurred hundreds of billions of dollars of private investment during the Biden administration. Almost 55% of the cancellation announcements did not include estimated job losses. The actual number of lost construction jobs is much likely higher. The construction and maintenance director, Matt Pauls, said, "I hear about the uncertainty constantly from anybody planning any project. They're hesitant to invest, are slowing everything to a snail's pace, or just stopping altogether. We had so much going for us, and in 10 months, he's cutting the knees out from under us." And so, this Weirton, West Virginia project is just one of many that have been canceled because of the Trump administration. And it's really, really been problematic. They talk about how this is a wasted opportunity. They mentioned that manufacturing was the hardest hit sector by total dollar value, but energy generation represents the greatest number of projects canceled and threatened. At least 190 projects in 35 states worth $68 billion were canceled or postponed in the first 10 months of the Trump administration. And because the IBEW was so successful in building labor protections into the Biden-era laws, most, if not all of those jobs would have been the IBEW's work. And so this is really, really devastating for the IBEW in particular. They have got a map of all of these jobs that have been canceled, postponed, or threatened. And obviously, a huge portion of it is in the South. In Texas, $50 billion of these projects have been canceled, postponed, or threatened by the Trump administration. In Tennessee, $2 billion. In North Carolina, $3 billion. In South Carolina, $2 billion. In Georgia, $4.5 billion of projects have been postponed, canceled, or threatened by the Trump administration. And we saw it in the Trump administration's own job numbers that they released just yesterday or the day before, showing that job production or new jobs were slow in December. Only 50,000 new jobs in the month of December, and only 580,000 new jobs for the entire year of 2025. That is the slowest job growth of any year since the pandemic, and the slowest job growth of any non-recession year since 2003. Since 2003. For the last 20 years, there has never been a year where the U.S. has not been in a recession where we have created fewer jobs. And again, for a one-to-one comparison, you can look at Biden's last year in office, 2024, 2 million jobs were created. I mean, just a totally, self-inflicted wound from the Trump administration on all of these blue-collar manufacturing and energy generation jobs.
And I know you're about to hit on this. That doesn't include the wind projects that were gutted right before Christmas, right? Like IBEW's piece covers the first 10 months, but right before Christmas, like December 22nd, 23rd, something like that, the Trump administration announced suspension of work on various offshore energy projects along the East Coast, including Vineyard Wind, Revolution Wind, Sunrise Wind, Empire Wind, and the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project. And that impacts thousands of folks, union workers from LIUNA, iron workers. We also, of course, saw NAB2 and the AFL-CIO put out statements about it as well. But thousands of union members have had their work pulled from them right before Christmas.
Right.
And a lot of the unions and the federations point out in their statements that, it's just, it doesn't even make sense. It just doesn't even make sense. It's not even like you've already broken ground on some of these projects. You've already invested in some of these projects.
One of these projects is 80% completed. I mean, it's crazy. It doesn't make sense at all. You're looking at the all of these, the cancellation or the postponement or the threatening of these construction jobs. It's a little bit different than the Keystone Pipeline, because these are future jobs that would have been created but for the Trump administration's terrible decisions. But the wind projects are a 1-to-1 comparison, because the Keystone XL pipeline, that had people on the job that were immediately put out of work, right? And so, that's difficult for them. But this one has the wind projects are 1-to-1, except it's like 3-to-1, because for every person that was put out of work on the Keystone XL pipeline, there were like 3 or 4 put out of work by the Trump administration with the swish of a pen, and right before Christmas. The North America's building trades unions put out in a statement, once again, the Trump administration has chosen politics over American workers and America's future. Shutting down offshore wind projects doesn't just pause construction, it kills thousands of good-paying jobs on projects that were legally permitted, fully vetted, fully funded, and already underway. These aren't hypothetical jobs, they are real paychecks and billions of dollars in investment. Freezing them now is not a careful review, it is political gamesmanship that creates chaos for workers and the economy. This decision throws American blue-collar workers out of work, increases energy costs, and hands China a strategic advantage. With white-collar jobs evaporating, manufacturing shedding jobs all over the country, the middle class and working class being hammered by inflation, unemployment rising, and our overall economy tanking, this is when our federal government should be encouraging any and all economic activity, not crushing it. And they mentioned there that the manufacturers are shedding jobs all across the country. I mean, that has to be the biggest failure of the Trump administration, because their whole thing was supposed to be, we're going to create good-paying manufacturing blue-collar jobs, and manufacturing jobs have been lost at a similar rate to federal government jobs, which they had. I mean, they come in and they have an explicit mission to destroy the federal government, to put federal civil servants out of work. That was like a whole thing that they did with a purpose to do that. And while trying to do the opposite, supposedly in the manufacturing sector, they achieved the same result. I mean, just think about that. Think about how incompetent you have to be to achieve the same results in the manufacturing sector of record job losses that you did in a sector of the economy where you are purposely trying to destroy it. Just total incompetence, complete incompetence, and foolishness. There's no really other way to describe it. The Iron Workers, the AFL-CIO, and LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, all put out statements as well. But I think the NABTU statement really gets at everything there is to say there. It's insane. Before we wrap up here on the first half of the program, I do want to get to at least one of these Boss Watch stories. Over in Texas, the U.S. Department of Labor has ordered a Fort Worth-based trucking company, Balkan Express, LLC, to reinstate and compensate a worker who was terminated after reporting safety concerns in violation of the Surface Transportation Assistance Act, which protects commercial motor vehicle safety complaints. The Department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration ordered Balkan Express to reinstate the employee and pay back wages, interest, compensatory, and punitive damages totaling more than $100,000. Staying in Texas, Peak Performers, incorporated as St. Vincent de Paul Rehabilitation Services of Texas, an Austin-based staffing agency providing staffing and recruitment services for workers with disabilities, agreed to pay $160,000 to a disabled former employee and institute significant reforms to settle a disability discrimination lawsuit filed by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. According to the EEOC's lawsuit, following a suicide attempt resulting from mental health conditions, an executive assistant with a disability requested approximately 4 to 6 weeks of unpaid leave to receive outpatient medical treatment. The EEOC's lawsuit alleged that even though executives at Peak Performers knew the executive assistant asked for time off to seek treatment for mental health-related disabilities, the company denied her brief unpaid leave request and instead fired her in April of 2024. Ultimately, the executive assistant completed her treatment and would have been able to return to work within 3 weeks, according to the lawsuit. This type of conduct alleged in the complaint violates the Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires employers to make reasonable accommodations for the known disabilities of employees absent an undue hardship, and prohibits employers from terminating employees on the basis of their disabilities, including when their terminations are caused by the employer's failure to provide a reasonable accommodation. So the EEOC filed suit in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas, Austin Division, and the EEOC and Peak Performers subsequently agreed to settle the case before trial or any findings concerning EEOC's claims, and on January 6th, the federal court approved the agreed 2-year consent decree resolving the litigation. So, in addition to paying $160,000 to the former executive assistant, the consent decree prohibits Peak Performers from engaging in disability discrimination, requires the organization to adopt and implement an ADA compliance policy with extensive procedures designed to protect the rights of disabled workers, and mandates detailed ADA compliance training to human resources personnel and various decision-making officials. The consent decree also requires reporting to the EEOC of any future disability discrimination complaints by employees or job applicants, as well as information concerning certain decisions to deny medical leave requested by employees. We are at about the end of the first half of the program. We've got a great second half of the program lined up for you. We have a couple of international stories. We're going to be talking to an independent reporter about the unionization of Michigan's home care workers. Really excited for that conversation. And we'll be taking your calls. We'll go ahead and open the phone lines, actually, 844-899-TVLR. If you'd like to call in, that phone number again is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a voicemail at any time if you find us when we are not live, or leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. So really excited for the second half of the program. If you missed any part of the first half of the program, you can go online and find us on Facebook and YouTube and watch the rest of the stream. Adam, do you have any plugs before we go?
Just our typical reminders. I want to remind folks to go to labornotes.org/events for free and low-cost trainings. There are always good opportunities to get more training from Labor Notes and really support what they do there. Also want to remind folks that we are part of Means TV, which is a worker-owned streaming cooperative. You can subscribe to Means TV with our discount code TVLR and receive 20% off either your first month or the entire year. I like to do it just as an entire year personally. And there are a lot of great programs on Means TV, some great documentaries about unionizing in the South, the Amazon labor union campaign. So definitely check that out. Again, Means TV, use the discount code TVLR and you can get 20% off. More important than ever that we build working class media. So we're really excited to partner with them. And we're always looking to find new partners who care about working people and having working people voices in the media.
That's it for the first half of the program. If you don't follow us on Facebook and YouTube at the Valley Labor Report, we appreciate your time. We'll see you next week. All right, folks, we are off the air now. Thank you for staying tuned. Got a great overtime lined up for you. We're going to take a break, and we will be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Folks, this is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Our phones should be open. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. If you'd like to call in, you can leave us a voicemail at any time if you're catching this when we are not live. And you can also send us a note at tvlr.fm/contact. Adam, you've got a couple of international stories you wanted to talk about. What's on the docket?
Yeah, I was doing some typical research this week and came across several international stories that caught my eye. So we're going to step outside the borders of the United States for a minute and talk about some labor struggles from around the world. And I do want to start with a simple question, which is, why should union members and working people in the American South care about international labor struggles? And, you know, the short answer for me is that our bosses already do, right? Capital is global. Corporations move money, production, and jobs across borders with ease. They shop the world for the lowest wages, the weakest labor laws, and the most vulnerable workers. And when they succeed in driving down standards somewhere else, they turn around and use that as leverage against workers here at home, right? So when workers in another country are exploited, ignored, or silenced, that doesn't just hurt them, it weakens all of us. And when workers win rights, dignity, and power anywhere in the world, that strengthens workers everywhere. That's why international solidarity isn't just morally right, though it is that. It's also practical and self-interested. It's how we stop a global race to the bottom. It's how we build real leverage against multinational corporations. And it's how working people learn from one another's struggles and victories. So with that in mind, I wanted to take a look at a few international labor stories that caught my eye this week and kind of illustrate what some of that solidarity may look like. And our first story comes out of the United Kingdom, and it involves one of the largest and most recognizable employers in the world, McDonald's. And according to reporting tied to a BBC investigation, hundreds of McDonald's workers in the UK have come forward with allegations of sexual harassment, racism, bullying, and other forms of abuse on the job. Many of the workers involved are young. Some were teenagers at the time of the alleged incidents. Not a surprise, right? In fact, we hear from folks all the time that teenagers should be working at McDonald's. So more than 700 current and former McDonald's workers have now instructed lawyers to pursue legal action, with claims spanning over 450 restaurants across the country. The allegations persist despite earlier promises from the company to clean up the workplace culture. The issue has drawn the attention of the UK Equality and Human Rights Commission, which has warned McDonald's franchises that they could face enforcement action if they fail to meet their legal duty to protect workers from harassment and discrimination. McDonald's UK Chief Executive Alistair Macro told a parliamentary committee that the allegations were abhorrent and unacceptable, and said that 29 people have been dismissed following substantiated complaints. For workers everywhere, this story is a reminder of how how power works inside multinational corporations. Without strong protections, accountability, and crucially, worker organization, abuse can become systemic. And when corporations operate globally, their labor practices in one country inevitably affect expectations and standards in others. So, next story I had was coming out of Greenland, which we've been hearing a lot about recently, thanks to the American president. Labor leaders there are speaking out on an issue that might sound like geopolitics, but it is deeply connected to workers' rights. In a recent interview with The Guardian, Jess Bertelsen, chair of Greenland's largest labor confederation, rejected renewed talk from U.S. political figures about the possibility of American annexation of Greenland. Bertelsen was blunt. He said, "We are not for sale and we will not be annexed." He emphasized that Greenland's future should be decided by the people who live and work there, not by foreign governments eyeing strategic or economic advantage. And for me, this matters for labor because worker self-determination doesn't stop at the workplace. Unions have always been about democracy, about workers having a real say over the conditions of their lives. When powerful countries or corporations treat entire regions as assets to be acquired, labor movements often end up on the front lines defending community control, peace, and democratic decision-making. International solidarity means respecting that principle everywhere, whether it's a factory floor in Alabama or an island nation in the Arctic. And sticking with some of our neighbors from the north, the next story I saw this week that was really interesting comes from Canada, where labor researchers and advocates are raising concerns about something that sounds kind of technical, but is actually very political, which is data. And we've talked a little bit today about the jobs reports and how important data can be in politics and in organizing. So according to an analysis published by The Conversation, Canada lacks consistent, comprehensive public data on strikes, work stoppages, union activity, other key labor indicators. And that makes it harder for unions, researchers, and the public to understand how labor struggles are evolving and harder to develop effective strategies in response. And the article, which again is on The Conversation, you can check that out there. It notes that existing data is often fragmented across jurisdictions, inconsistently collected, or difficult to access. Without reliable information, it becomes harder to track trends in worker unrest, evaluate labor policy, or make the case for stronger protections. And for workers in the American South, this story sounds pretty familiar because often our labor struggles seem to be undercounted or ignored. And even with the transition to the Trump administration, we saw a disruption in the flow of information coming from agencies like the Department of Labor, EEOC. So, when labor struggles are undercounted or ignored, it becomes easier for politicians and corporations to pretend that workers' voices don't exist. International solidarity isn't just about protest and picket lines, it's also about making workers visible, documenting their struggles, and ensuring they're counted. And whether that is for data and data collection and data analysis, or like what we do on the Valley Labor Report, what folks are trying to do with labor media to make sure that we're actually amplifying the voices of working people. And finally, want to go to Colombia, where international labor solidarity is taking a concrete form. According to People's World, an international union delegation, including representatives from the UAW, United Auto Workers, recently visited Colombian auto workers who have been fighting General Motors for more than 14 years. These workers, organized with the Association of Injured Workers and Ex-Workers of GM Colmotores, were injured on the job at GM's Colmotores plant and alleged that the company abandoned them after their injuries, leaving them without adequate compensation or support. Their long struggle has included protests, hunger strikes, and years of organizing. The visiting union delegation demanded justice for the injured workers and accountability from GM, highlighting the role multinational corporations play in shaping labor conditions across borders. So really happy to see that solidarity there. Happy to see workers showing up for one another across national lines, confronting this global corporation with a united voice and refusing to let injuries and abuses just be quietly swept aside. So what do these stories have in common? For me, I think they show us that worker struggles are connected, whether it's about safety and dignity on the job, democratic self-determination, access to information, or corporate accountability. For union members and working people in the American South, internationalism isn't abstract. Our region is deeply tied into global supply chains, from auto manufacturing to fast food to logistics. The same corporations operating overseas are often the ones shaping working conditions and influencing politicians right here at home. When workers stand together across borders, we raise standards everywhere. And when we ignore one another's struggles, corporations are all too happy to exploit those divisions. So international solidarity isn't just a slogan, and it's not about charity. It's a strategy, and it's one that we need more now than ever.
Appreciate that international roundup, Adam. I always love hearing about international stories. I think the thing that really sticks out to me when I read about international stories is how different I am made to feel about the people of other countries, the people who have different cultures than me, the people who look and dress differently than me, but particularly when you read about labor struggles in other countries, the thing that comes out of that is how similar we are, and how similar the wants and needs of people in different countries are, and how similar the things that we have to do to secure those wants and needs are. So I think that those are really important, and I enjoy getting to learn about those. I believe that we should have our guest on the Zoom. Ethan Bakuli is an independent journalist. He's been writing about Michigan's home care workers. Ethan, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Good job, Jacob, for having me.
Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. We talked a couple of weeks ago about how home care workers and their rights are under attack in the second Trump administration. But I think that a really good sort of tag on to that segment is your story about Michigan's home care workers, because in Michigan, home care workers are not only sort of defending themselves against attacks, they are making positive progress. Home care workers won a huge union election last year, and you've been following that story pretty closely. Can you talk to us about how we got to the point that they could even have an election, just as an opener to the conversation?
Yeah, of course. So this all started coming together back in 2022. Back then, not only did Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer win her re-election campaign, but Democrats managed to flip both chambers of the Michigan legislature, making for the first, blue trifecta in state history for about 40 years or so. So with that added legislative power, one of Whitmer's first initiatives was to repeal the right to work, which had made union membership optional. It had been put in place by former Governor Rick Snyder, who had also stripped away a lot of union protections during his tenure. So bringing back some of those union protections brought about SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, to organize a campaign effort to bring together home care workers in Michigan. We've got about 32,000 home care workers enrolled in this Medicaid-funded program called Home Help. So this campaign was the first opportunity in about a decade for home care workers to be in a union. They had previously been with SEIU going back in the 2010s, 2000s, but part of Snyder's efforts had denied their collective bargaining rights at the state.
You wrote an article called "There's Power in Numbers" for Capital in Maine, a news outlet that investigates money, power, and society. And so it's really interesting being able to, and not only that article, but you've got multiple other articles in Capital in Maine about this story, going back over a year ago. And so it's really interesting kind of going back and reading those articles and listening to you now talking about how they were able to get to the point where they even could unionize, because as you talk about in your article, workers in the United States do not have uniform labor protections. Not every worker has a right to a union. I mean, every worker has a right to a union in the sense that they can freely associate with a labor organization, but they don't have a right to collective bargaining in the same way across industries and across sectors. So it was interesting seeing the path to even getting these rights. But I'm curious, why did they want to unionize? Like, what was the impetus for trying to secure these rights in the first place?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think even before I got on, just the conversation I heard about, kitchen table politics, a lot of basic things around wages and benefits are really top of mind for folks. As your audience probably knows, domestic work is unglamorous work. You're working all hours of the day, and in this particular case, you're assisting elderly folks with disabilities, go through their daily routines, whether that be helping them with their laundry, meal prep, medication, bringing them back and forth from medical appointments, helping them get to and from the bathroom. That can be very physically and mentally demanding work. And this is a field that has historically been women dominated, low wage, and typically it's women of color. So it's the kind of career or industry that doesn't get a whole lot of respect or financial compensation, despite the fact that this is a quickly growing industry just based off of the need for more people to take care of our aging population as well as our disabled population. So I think all of those forces, the background, the sort of systemic inequalities kind of built up to this. And then, yeah, you just have people really dealing with the impact of ongoing inflation, ongoing just cost of living being exorbitant here in Michigan and across the US. And I think people just being, coming to a point where people are frankly pissed off and burned out. And, caregivers just wanted to have a voice and wanted to have a platform to speak about their issues.
And so they were able to unionize, and they had that election back in October. They won. Can you talk a little bit about what the union election campaign was like?
Yeah, I mean, they really hit the ground running after I said, like, right to work was repealed, and SEIU had canvassers going out around Michigan, door knocking, finding home care workers, and just having dialogues with them on their porch steps, really gauging people's interest in joining a union, finding out what concerns that they had about their current conditions and the state of their work, as well as just listing out the benefits of forming a union. SEIU has been able to form unions for home care workers in other states, most notably California. That was like the first state, I believe, where it really got to come to fruition. So yeah, with more folks interested and excited about the possibility of forming a union, they started to reach out to state lawmakers who crafted a series of bills that specifically helped to restore their collective bargaining rights. One bill was about making sure that they were categorized as public employees, which is the main strategy that SEIU has used in other states, mainly Democratic states along the Pacific Northwest and the Northeast, to be able to get folks to bargain with the state, and then creating this public authority, which serves as a intermediary between home care workers and the state. And so that authority can help with standardizing registration, handling training for home care workers coming into the field, and just overall just giving them the practical know-how about how you take care of the folks that you're taking care of. So those bills were signed into law last October of 2024, and they went into effect last spring. And then once that happened, SEIU started to mobilize folks to be able to start collecting cards, collecting signatures, to call together a union. So that by October of last year, they were able to call a union, and overwhelming majority of folks who voted were voting in favor of the union. I think it was around 70%. So it was about a roughly 2-year campaign, but a lot of canvassing, a lot of rallying people at the state house, bringing people to different parts of, Michigan, having people go up higher in the Lower Peninsula, having people here in Detroit or across in Grand Rapids. So all over the state, folks were really engaged around this.
It sounds really exciting, and seeing a union win as big as that is not something that you see every day. I mean, 35,000 people getting a union
right?
Statewide, yeah. It's so exciting, and so I think you've talked some about some of these things, but what are some of the presumably now they're in contract negotiations. It's a couple of months since they won their union, and so what are they looking to secure in a new union contract?
Yeah, so I think top of mind for folks is raising wages. Right now, wages have seen a slight uptick just relative to the state minimum wage increasing. So I think this year, folks are going to be entering the new year with $17 an hour. So that's broken up between like $13 for minimum wage in Michigan, and then there is like a direct care worker wage increase that they saw about $3 to $4. So, it's sizable, especially given that there were a lot of folks who came into this a decade ago, 2 decades ago, and they were making more than $300 a month off of doing this work. And oftentimes people also have to pick up second jobs to be doing this, and you're taking care of a client for 24/7. Like I said, like a lot of times you just can't really leave. You're working at home with them throughout all their basic needs. So I think it's really important for folks that I spoke to and that the union has really pushed out to just have, continual wage increases to get to a point, I think around here in Metro Detroit, I mean, the a living wage for somebody who's living by themselves should be around $35 an hour. So, even at 17, it's still a very far ways away. And then the other thing to keep in mind is like respite, paid leave would be super beneficial for folks. I mean, so many people don't really have that flexibility in their schedule with the work that they're doing to actually be able to live their lives, pick up whatever things they need to do. And so part of the push for the union itself is just to be able to have folks have a system that allows them to effectively seek out somebody else, like a registry that allows them to connect to another home care worker who could, switch places with them, pick up their shift so that they can take care of their client while they're trying to go out and, do whatever they need to do for their basic life. But I think those things are definitely top of mind: benefits, wages, improved insurance for folks, just to be able to have care under the system.
I've mentioned that you've been following this story pretty closely for over a year now. You've got several articles in Capital and Maine about this story. So I'm curious what you think is next for these stories. I'm assuming that you're going to keep covering it as updates come. What, if you had to look into a crystal ball, what are the stories that you think you'll be writing about this over the next 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely meaningful to see just how this work really impacted people on the individual level. We talked a lot about like the dignity of their work came forward. And so, for sure, top of mind is just getting to see this contract negotiation, but what's next for them? How does this mobilized and organized home care work unit sort of continue to build power here in Michigan? Like you said, 32,000, 35,000 is a lot. Those numbers are big. You look across the rest of the country, it's not, relatively as big as that. And so I think something also of interest for me is just how can you translate this to other states? State protection for home care workers is especially important given the kinds of pushbacks that the Trump administration is trying to do to home care workers getting those federal protections. So, I've been trying to even look at places like Pennsylvania, where I know they've been really trying to push for that, or other states. So, I think it will be just as important to keep in mind what's happening here on the state level, but also, nationally, what can other states be doing to really make sure that they can do the work that Michigan was able to do these last couple of years.
Ethan Bakuli is an independent journalist, writes sometimes for Capital in Maine. His most recent article is "There's Power in Numbers," about a Michigan home care workers union of 32,000 that was formed last year. Thank you so much for your time, Ethan. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with before we let you go? Maybe where people can find you, or any other stories that you've been writing about?
Yeah, continue to follow my work on Capital in Maine. I also cover different issues here in Michigan. Data centers are a huge concern over here, as they are in the rest of the country. So, covering climate concerns, health concerns. But yeah, if you just type in my name, you can probably find most of my work there.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Again, Ethan Bakuli, independent journalist, writer for Capital in Maine. Check out his work. And yeah, really enjoyed that story.
Yeah, that's a huge win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, over 30,000 workers in a statewide election. That is such an enormous win. And like Ethan said, the work that they do can be so grueling and difficult, isolating at times, I imagine. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, how they build from this. Obviously, want them to get a good contract and hope they will. But I would love to see, how they build power, how they continue to organize these 30,000 plus workers, empower these workers. How many leaders can come out of this campaign, right? How many future leaders are already going to come out of this campaign? That's really interesting, and I think could, maybe shake things up in the Michigan labor movement as well. But definitely want to see it in the South.
Mm-hmm.
I get it, and I understand. You work with what you got, and it's different conditions in Michigan right now than in Alabama and Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee. But we definitely need the unionization of home health care workers down here. Healthcare, period, right? Healthcare as an industry in the South is very, very underorganized. We're always really excited when we see a big campaign like by National Nurses United, for example. They've had some big wins in the South over the last couple of years. New Orleans, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, but it's a really underorganized sector. So would love to see this kind of organizing take off in the South, and it's going to have to look a little different. Obviously, the political and regulatory conditions are different, but there's all the more reason to do it because it's needed. So yeah, great story. Glad you turned me on to this story, and appreciate Ethan's work with Capital in Maine.
Yeah, it is really exciting, and I will say to SEIU's credit, I think that they've committed to spending $10 million on organizing in the South over the next couple of years. So, any minute now, I'm sure we'll be getting a 10,000 person home health care union in Alabama. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number if you'd like to call in. The phone number is 844-899-8857. We did have somebody in the chat, Freestyle Skates 27, say that they are their union is voting to authorize a strike next week. Told them that they should call in, and I think that this is them on the line now, so let's take that call, bring them on the air. 908 area code is the caller. From a 908 area code, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how's it going? If you don't mind, is it okay if I stay anonymous just in case of retaliation?
Yes. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, yes. So I'm calling. So we're in the, I'd like to remain anonymous simply. I'll explain some of the reasons. But our union is in the early steps of preparing for a strike. Our contract was extended last year, and it's set to expire at the end of this month. And the union and the company itself haven't been able to, come up with a contract that we all agree with. So we're currently in the beginning stages of preparing for a strike. We have on Tuesday a meeting that's coming up where we're going to get together and decide what further actions are going to have to be done. Reasons for striking is because over the last year or so, the company, one of the big reasons is the company has been, for lack of a better words, just canning everybody. Our union is pretty much being what it seems like sabotaged. From the employers. They're very aggressive, and despite record profits, we're in the water industry, so privatized water it's a big industry. We're making record profits, yet they're putting in all these aggressive tactics to fire people. Just to put into perspective, 6 people where I work at currently just got fired around the holiday season, and because of such a crunch, we're all working 12 to 16 hours on rotating shifts, and it's been a nightmare. Not only from the production side, but I hear a lot of, like that we have telematic systems that have been placed into the company vehicles that are, docking people even for driving 2, 3, 4 miles, over the speed limit. And the speed limit infractions don't even take into consideration, the actual speed limit. Sometimes, Google Maps will show you a lower speed limit than what the street actually calls for. So just little silly things like that. But I mean, even our union, our local president was terminated last year for one of these factions.
Wow.
So we're just gearing up for, by Tuesday we'll find out what we're going to do, but it seems like a strike is pretty much inevitable. They've been telling us to prepare throughout the month, and I'll definitely have more info on that on Tuesday. But yeah, just
you mentioned that
staffing.
You said that you wanted to stay anonymous out of fear of retaliation. Or do you want to keep? Do you want to not give more detail than you have about the job and like where you work and stuff like that, or would you be willing to share more of that information?
I'll only say that I'm in water production.
Okay.
We work for a major water company. I'll keep it at that.
Gotcha.
Again, just for fear of retaliation. They've
been, for sure.
Cracking down on a lot of people. So, but a strike is definitely in the talks, and it seems like that's more likely than the company trying to come to terms with the contract that we all agree with.
Well, best of luck. What are the things that y'all are wanting to get in a contract?
Well, one of the big proposals from us definitely is we're trying to work towards fixing like I said, we have rotational shifts in our site. We're trying to that's one of our biggest pushes because there's turnover, and we think that's one of the causes of people just not staying in our job. We're incredibly understaffed, and as a lot of the old timers are starting to retire, we're stuck in a hard place. I mean, like I said, 12, 16-hour shifts we're doing throughout and during the holidays, and it's unsustainable. And once the old timers are retired, there's going to be nobody, So that's unfortunately I can't give more now. I definitely once everything's set in stone, and hopefully by next episode, when things are set, I could explain more. But I just ask that everybody just stay in solidarity with us.
Yeah, man. Best of luck, and thanks for calling in and sharing with us. And yeah, best of luck. That sounds terrible. Wouldn't want to do that. So.
All right. Will do. I'll keep you guys all updated. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for calling in. If you'd like to get where he was, that phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. And appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat. If you haven't liked the stream, go ahead and do that. Subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. And let's see. We are also live on TikTok. If you would, if you'd like to find us there, or and I will say that on TikTok, the live is just what you see on YouTube, But Joe, our video guy, is doing some really, really cool shorts that he's got set to music and everything, and he does he just does a lot of really cool video stuff. You should check it out. Follow us on TikTok if you're not already. Yeah, I mean, there's talk about, regime, the Trump administration supporting regime change wars in Venezuela, and that is not what I thought that people were signing up for when they voted for the Trump administration. But, now that he's doing it, it's fine, I guess. It's kind of crazy that people will turn on a dime so quickly for that. But, oh well. We do have a clip that I wanted to react to. Before we get to that, Adam, I don't know if you had any other stories. We may wrap up the show a little bit early today. Don't
forget Union Busters. We got to talk about the Union Busters.
That's true. Well, I mean, we're going to be starting a different format for that.
Oh,
remember
that's
that
right.
we talked about yesterday?
That's right. That's right. So, other than that, that was the main thing that I had on my radar for sure.
Yeah, the Union Buster stuff, we really appreciate the support of Labor Lab and their sponsorship over the last year. And so what we have been doing is, just kind of sharing with you the filings from Union Busters and like how much money they're being paid and what they're being paid to do, et cetera, et cetera. And what I think are going to try to do this year is reach out to unions that have campaigns where Union Busters are being hired to try to talk to them about the effect of Union Busters on the campaign, the effect that Union Busters have on organizing workers generally. And so I think that's a really interesting I think that's something that's really interesting to try to do, and so we're going to be trying to do that and sharing those interviews with you about once a month is the sort of thing. So
yeah, if you're not already following Labor Lab, you definitely should be.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to laborlab.us is the website. Go to laborlab.us. You can look up Union Busters, and they also have a lot of good resources, even very basic what is a union, what is bargaining and organizing, some very basic educational resources. So it is a great website to share with folks. Bookmark it, spread it around. Make sure that organizers and union leaders that are turned on to Labor Lab, because in my travels, I have run across folks who are telling me stories of these crazy union busters showing up to their job site. And that's when I pitch Labor Lab, right? Like, hey, have you looked them up? Have you checked this out? Because you may be able to find some intel on these creeps that they're sending to your workplace.
Right. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. 844-899-TVLR if you would like to give us a call. And you can leave us a voicemail at any time as well. So we got this clip here, and it's kind of similar to one that we've reacted to from this guy in the past. It's from a streamer, Destiny, and for some reason, he just really does not like unions. And I don't understand why that is, because unions are I just don't understand why you would have such a negative reaction to unions as a liberal streamer. It's very strange.
Right. Like, I understand why bosses don't like unions.
And I understand why conservative politicians don't like unions, because, unions are not typically in support of stealing money from poor folks and giving it to rich folks, right? And that's kind of the whole thing about being a conservative politician. So I understand those constituencies, even liberal bosses. But, if you're just a politics influencer, I really do not understand why you don't like unions. It's super weird. And so let's play this. Let's play this clip one.
I think the term wokeism and people on the right often use it as a means to
just a second. He is
and there's a very key example of this. So the Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, let's start it from the beginning. Let's pause it. And we'll start it from the beginning here. And just to give y'all some context about this clip, he is reacting to a Jubilee video. And so Jubilee does these things where it's really crazy and sort of mind-numbing to watch, because it's like Twitter in real life. Basically, what they do is they get a guy and put a guy in the center of a warehouse and have 20 people that disagree with him sat around him, and so the guy in the center is making a claim about something or another, and the 20 people around him all fight each other to get the chair, and they get and so they try to disagree with the claim that the guy in the chair is making, and the and the people that did not get the chair can then raise a red flag and try to get people out. And so it ends up you only get 90 seconds of conversation per interlocutor. It's very strange, and the format really, really lends itself to trying to make the craziest points possible. And so so that's what he's reacting to, and he's reacting to an episode of it where you've got a liberal guy in the center and conservative people on the outer rims. So let's react to this clip.
I think the term wokeism and people on the right often use it as a means to deflect and distract from class politics. And there's a very key example of this. So the Department of Government Efficiency.
Okay, yeah, so you can pause it there. And so you can see there how he reacts to class politics. I mean, isn't that a super weird way to react to somebody saying class politics? And I actually think that I got it mixed up. The guy in the center is a more conservative fellow, and the people on the outside are more liberal types. And so the claim, if I'm remembering correctly, is Piers Morgan is in the center. He's saying wokeism is bad or something. Wokeism is really, really bad. And so this liberal type guy, he's wokeism is, that's kind of there's a bit of a distraction. I mean, just like we heard from the president of the Kentucky AFL-CIO earlier on in the program, talked about how social issues are used by political elites to try to divide up the working class, so that we're talking about who people can love, or what sorts of clothes people are wearing, or what the person who lives next to you looks like, rather than how much are the people at the top stealing from us, right? And that's obvious. That is just so, that's the most obvious thing in the world, and the oldest play in the book. And so it's super weird that you would just react to class politics with just disdain and derision, and, you know, maybe indicative of like sort of his general political outlook. Let's continue.
Something that you actually celebrated quite a bit when it initially came into office. Elon Musk was coming in to...
Oh, yes. Dude, there's so much shit that people need to be, like, held to account for. Doge is definitely one of them. There is no world where conservatives can fucking defend Doge as being anything other than a monumental fucking failure. How humiliating. Absolutely nothing came from Doge. There's just no world where you feel good about that.
Pause. That is absolutely true. So disagree with Destiny at the beginning. Super agree here. I mean, there really is, you know, I mean, you've really got to be embarrassed. And you know, one of the stations that we were on in Huntsville, we played in some of our best ofs over Christmas. We played portions of his radio program from back in April or May, when he was talking about how, like, literally a quote from, you know, when he thought, for some reason, I mean, it was what ended up happening with Doge was so predictable. But he was saying at the time, when it was kind of at its, apex of popularity, Doge is probably the most important project that the federal government has ever undertaken in my entire life. And it's like, so nothing, despite the fact that they did cull like 10% of the federal workforce. They culled 10% of the federal workforce in a year, and still ended up spending more money year over year than we spent under the last year of the Biden administration. I mean, that is, you know, and the reason for that, which, you know, the people who were Doge fanatics and people like the local talk radio host that we share a station with, you know, he doesn't know, or he didn't know, that only 4% of the federal budget is made up of salaries and benefits of federal workers, right? So going after federal workers was never going to, in any significant way at all, even a little bit, address the problem of spending, to the extent that that's a problem. Going after federal workers was never going to do anything about that. And so that's all that Doge was about, basically, was firing people, and predictably, nothing happened with respect to how much the United States is spending. Total failure, and people should have to own that. Absolutely. Let's continue.
Obviously, they found 0 instances of fraud. To the extent they found waste, it was just stuff that they ideologically disagreed with.
True.
And there were all these programs they were cutting, for example, like LGBTQ programs in Latin America, et cetera. And we were celebrating this all as a big victory. But this was all a distraction, because what the agency was actually doing was destroying the National Labor Relations Board, a board that is designed to protect workers' abilities to unionize, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a bureau that is meant to protect consumers from billionaire capitalists like Elon Musk. These institutions, along with the IRS, all of these institutions meant to actually protect.
Good. Also, fuck labor unions. Always fuck unions, okay? 1, because we're rich, and so fuck them. Okay, number 1. And number 2, because the head of the labor, was it this board, didn't fucking support Biden in the goddamn election, even though Biden, for the first time, joined picket line people or whatever, and was doing everything he could for labor relations. Fuck. Yeah, what, the Teamsters or whatever? Fuck those guys.
Okay,
fuck.
Pause it for a second. Yeah, so this guy... I mean, you know, just really doesn't know anything about anything about unions, you know, very clearly. And you know, I mean, look, that's fine, right? I mean, people have different, things that they're interested in and learn about and stuff. But it is less than advisable to be talking so stridently about these things when you very clearly know nothing about it. So the guy was talking about how the Trump administration was trying to do these big flashy things, which like Doge, which ended up not doing anything, while they were also dismantling key agencies that protect workers. These are agencies of the government that protect workers and consumers. And so he mentioned the National Labor Relations Board and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The National Labor Relations Board oversees union elections and relations between unions and companies and stuff like that. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau protects consumers from fraud and stuff, which is why, companies like Tesla don't like the CFPB because they want to be able to defraud their customers. And so he heard that, and literally the only thing that he knows about unions is that Sean O'Brien didn't support President Biden in his re-election bid. That's literally the only thing that he knows about unions. And that is a crazy thing to be the only thing that you know about unions, because that is so out of context. But even, and very clearly not knowing anything else about unions. Because look, the Teamsters is one union out of dozens and dozens in the United States. The Teamsters is not even the biggest union. The Teamsters is actually far from being the biggest union. The biggest union is the Teachers Union, the National Education Association, which has more than twice as many members as the Teamsters. And the National Education Association, guess what? Endorsed Biden and Harris. The AFT, another big union, I believe bigger than the Teamsters, also endorsed Harris. The Service Employees International Union, also a union bigger than the Teamsters, endorsed Harris. And even the Teamsters, and look, I think the Teamsters have been being crazy as it relates to politics. Just Sean O'Brien has been being crazy as it relates to politics. But even the Teamsters, if you look at their spending and you do like 3 seconds of research, other than just what is this one guy who is the leader of the union saying and doing, you can see that in 2024, they donated more than 10 times more to Democrats than to Republicans. And so if your only reason for caring about unions is whether or not they support Democrats or Republicans, which is a really dumb thing to care about, right? That's a really dumb thing to only care about unions about. Unions are so much more than that, and political activity is the super minority of what unions actually do. But even if that's the only thing that you care about, and even if the only union that you know about is the Teamsters, you can just look and see that the Teamsters spent $1.43 million to Democrats in 2024 and $115,000 to Republicans in 2024. They did not endorse Trump. And so, that's crazy to say just because this one guy didn't do. And also, the Teamsters International Union and Sean O'Brien did not endorse Trump, or they did not endorse Biden, but basically the rest of the union did. Like all of the joint councils all across the country representing local unions within the Teamsters, they endorsed Harris, even though the International didn't. And so that is a bizarre reason to hate unions because that's so out of context, even just from that one union. But then the rest of the labor movement super supported Harris and Biden. And so you can look at the spending of the overall labor movement and see that. Let's see. If we look at 2024 on OpenSecrets.com, I thought there was a thing that said party split by unions. Okay. Party split of recipients by election cycle. In 2024, unions spent $67 million in support of Democrats and $9 million in support of Republicans. So, not even close to the same. And overwhelmingly in support of Democrats because, some union members don't like that. But the reality is that Democrats don't want us dead and Republicans do. And so, you really gotta, take that into account if you're going to be doing political activity. And he mentioned that Biden walked on a picket line, first president in U.S. history to do that, which is really cool. And the union that he walked on a picket line with, the United Auto Workers, spent and exerted a lot of energy to support Harris. And they actually have a really interesting breakdown of how important their engagement with their members was. And so if you Google, it's on their website, and you Google UAW poll shows member support for Harris growing significantly in battleground states as union's member engagement program delivers results. And so look, she did not win battleground states, but the UAW can't control that. The UAW can't. The biggest way that the unions or that the UAW can support a politician is by activating their members. And so they did that significantly. And they showed that, the UAW internationally endorsed Harris. And they said that the poll conducted among union members in key swing states shows Harris leading Trump by 22 points among union members, among members of the UAW. They say that the union's comprehensive outreach program aimed at connecting every member has been crucial in support of building support for Harris. In addition to a robust phone, text, and mail program, UAW members are engaging in conversations at work sites and within their communities. In Michigan, they have participated in an intensive door-to-door campaign reaching over 200,000 union households so far. Among members who reported hearing from the UAW about the presidential election, Harris's lead over Trump grows to 29 points. These numbers highlight the effectiveness of the union's aggressive strategy to inform members about the candidates' positions on key economic issues, including protecting overtime pay, overhauling harmful trade deals, preventing offshoring, expanding retirement security, and taking on corporate greed. Some additional poll findings. Michigan UAW members favor Harris by a 20-point margin. Support among non-college educated men shows a 14-point margin in favor of Harris among UAW non-college educated men. And UAW members support U.S. Senate candidate Alyssa Slotkin by an 18-point margin. So, look, if it shouldn't be, but if the only reason that you care about unions is the extent to which they support Democrats, you should be unions' biggest fan. But more than that, unions are so much more than that. Unions are about improving the lives of working people day to day. And that's why I care about it. I think that the political and social change that unions can bring about are really important. But I think that improving the day-to-day lives of working people is the key thing that unions do. And it's why they're so important. And it is able to, unions are sort of like laboratories for democracy. I mean, they are one of the only places where working people can have some level of control, a voice in their life so much more than they do basically anywhere else, and certainly in non-union workplaces, right? I mean, where else do you get non-college educated working people having meetings, controlling meetings, chairing meetings, adhering to Robert's rules, and learning how to participate in organized structures, learning how to run for office? All these sorts of things are really, really important for unions, and unions have been a real bedrock of social change in the United States. You look at the civil rights movement, significantly supported by the labor movement. In fact, the March on Washington in the 60s, where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous speech, funded by the United Auto Workers. You look at the New Deal. I mean, that would not have happened without the labor movement. Medicare, Social Security, that would not have happened without the labor movement. And so, yeah, it's just so weird the way that he is responding to talk about unions. And, somebody in the chat says that I don't think the Teamsters supported Harris. It's true that the International did not support Harris, but basically, and I think maybe even all of the joint councils, the joint councils for Teamsters are like their regional formations. across the country, they all supported Harris, including, I do know for a fact that the Joint Council in the South supported Harris. So, the top body, the international, did not support, but all of the regional bodies did. So, that's worth noting. I don't know if you had any other thoughts about that.
I just can't believe
it is bonkers.
It's just hard to believe sometimes. Some of these folks and what they can say to such a huge audience. Very strange. Strange times we're living in.
It is really strange. I don't. The Teamsters didn't support Harris the last time that happened was 50 years ago. I mean, I'm not sure what Mark is. I think he heard what I just said about the regions. I think that was in response to what I said about the regions.
It's never
supporting
worth putting
Harris.
too much attention into what Mark is
That's true. That's true. But so I that's like non-responsive to what I was saying. But also the last time that happened was 50 years ago. I mean, the Teamsters endorsed Biden in 2020. So I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. Or the International supported Biden in 2020. So yeah, it is really strange, especially because I know that Destiny is, he is, I have seen enough of him to know that he's interested in encouraging people to participate in politics in real life. And there are few more effective ways to participate in political and civic life for most working people in the country than to unionize your workplace or to be active in your union if your workplace is already unionized, right? I mean, there's so few places where you can get engaged immediately and start making a difference in people's lives. And because that's presumably what you care about if you care about politics at all, is you want to make people's lives better. And there are just basically no other place that you can get engaged and so quickly start making a difference in people's lives than unionizing your workplace or being active in your union if your workplace is already unionized. So I just really do not understand why he is so instinctively opposed to unions, and I don't know. It's strange. All right. Well, we may go ahead and call it a day, folks. Appreciate everybody tuning in. 844-899-8857. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number if you'd like to leave us a voicemail. TVLR.fm/contact if you'd like to leave us a written note. TVLR.fm/donate if you would like to support the program. And, I think that's it. Adam, you have anything else?
Please leave us a voicemail throughout the week. We would love to get some more voicemails and just hear reports from folks. And I did look and see what Labor Notes has on offer coming up on training. They have a stewards workshop holding effective meetings January 22nd. That should be good. As well as an online workshop January 28th, language equity in your local union. So that's a good one. And already on the docket for the spring, March 6th, they have labor educator training, secrets of a successful organizer. And so I believe this is an in-person training to get you to be a trainer. But you can check all that out at labornotes.org/events. And I think that's all I have. So yeah, appreciate it, folks. Appreciate you tuning in. As always, feel encouraged to send us tips, send us questions, send us anything. We love to get emails and phone calls and voicemails and stuff from folks. We really appreciate your input.
All right. We'll see you next week, folks.